IVM.
Hello listeners, this is Vineet. You're listening to Storytellers and Storysellers. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit more about it and about who I have on here. Ever since I started this podcast, I wanted to have someone on here from radio because it was like video was going audio with podcasts, but audio was going video with radio guys moving to sort of producing video content. And there's nobody better than Ganesh Iyer from Radio Mirchi to talk about it. Radio Mirchi, as you will hear on this episode later, will very soon only be called Mirchi. That's right. You heard it here first. Ganesh told me before anybody else knew. That's it. I'm just kidding. That aside, check out this episode. It's full of Ganesh's anecdotes and his experiences from a career that goes back to 1998. Right, that's the infancy of the internet and how things were. A completely different time. He tells us about what Mirchi is up to and his whole career in a nutshell. I'm definitely going to have him back very, very soon to talk about other stuff. But before that, check out this episode of Going Video with Radio Mirchi with Ganesh Iyer. This is Storytellers and Storysellers with Vineet Kanabar. Stay tuned for the episode right after this. And hey, wash your hands.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Today we're talking to Ganesh Iyer from Radio Mirchi. Ganesh is someone that I've known for the past few years, and he's been leading the charge of going video with radio. One of the reasons why I thought having Ganesh on the show would be great is to help us understand how this business has really changed, right? And Ganesh is someone who joined the entertainment business out of IIM Calcutta. I think it was 96 around that time. And I'm just super thrilled to have Ganesh here to talk to us about how this business has changed and what he's been doing with Mirchi, which is, again, one of the leading radio companies, the media companies in this country. Hi, Ganesh. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vineet. Pleasure to be here.
It's always great to talk to you, sir. 96, 97, you're fresh out of IIM. All your buddies are probably ending up at more corporate jobs than you're at AB Corp, was it?
Yes, ABCL as it was called then.
ABCL, Amitabh Bachchan and the company, living the dream at that time.
Yes.
Tell us how that was for you.
Right. So to be fair, actually even ABCL was trying to posture or position itself as a corporate company. And again, to be fair to its credit, I think it really tried hard, right? If you actually ran a knife through the company, you would have two distinct halves from the management point of view. One was hardcore, blue chip IIM graduates. I mean, we were 6 management trainees, but even before us, they had hired people who had experience. Harish Chawla is a very, very prominent name, actually. So he went on to eventually build the entire CNBC empire, thousands of crores, and now he's an investment banker, right? So he's a private equity investor. Kalol Sen, many, right? Even Sanjeev Gupta, the CEO, was from Lever's background, right? IIT Bombay and HUL then actually. Right. And the other half was people sourced completely from the trade, people who had 10, 15 years in film production, people who were in the audio business, many of them who couldn't really speak English, but they were really very well versed with the industry or whatever they were supposed to be good at, right? Right. In fact, the whole joke was that they had this tie culture in order to pass off as a corporate company, or at least to be taken seriously in the business. We all had to wear ties Monday to Friday, and this half, which I said, which was from the trade, would find it extremely uncomfortable, right? They would come with a tie in the hand. They would just, whenever there was a meeting, they would just slip it on, and as soon as they went back somewhere more comfortable, they would remove it. So in many ways, it was very interesting. I mean, you're right. Most of my friends...
They didn't have clip-ons?
They did. I mean, I didn't let you in on that secret. Some of them actually did, right? They were like, right? In fact, I still see many of those names. So I have this thing of, after a movie, I wait on and see the entire end credits because I happen to over time have acquainted myself with many of those names.
Right.
And I also, sometimes I'm happy to see the growth of some people who I had probably interacted at that time, right? So yeah, so you're right. So most of my friends were actually in more corporate jobs, P&G, HUL, McKinsey and BCG and Booz Allen and whatever else, right? Reckitt. And here I was in a completely alien environment. The only comforting factor, as I said, was that there were 6 of us, right? So 5 management trainings. So we would hang around together. And we had this whole job rotation thing, which I think is very archaic now, but everybody had to spend 2 months in each of the departments, which is how I actually got exposed to film production, film distribution, celebrity management. So we had this entire new wing. People talk about agents now. 96, 97, we used to take care of Amir Khan and Sunil Shetty's business.
Right.
Also the commercial part of it, the non-film part of it, right? So in fact, I was part of the team that signed Sunil Shetty for Colgate tooth powder. I don't know, for many years they used that deal, and if you've seen Doordarshan, you would quickly see Sunil Shetty brandishing the Colgate tooth powder ka pack and all. We tried to get a deal for Amir for some soap that Godrej was launching and so on. So I was part of multiple functions, and that was fabulous exposure, in spite of the fact that I was in an absolute alien world, because it's entertainment business itself, and it's only in the last 7, 8, 10 years maybe that you see a lot of so-called business professionals or professionally educated people who are coming in, including people like your lot, right? I mean, of course, even a few years before you. But yeah, I mean, we were probably 6 of it, and actually even they left. Within the first 6, 8, 9 months, they had all kind of deserted the ship, because we were a sinking ship in many ways. I was among the very last to leave the company, right? From 120 odd people I set up, we were down to 15 people, right? So I think I told you this once. So I was the captain of the ABCL cricket team, but we could barely put together a team, and this was purely out of the passion of this man called Abhishek Bachchan, right? You see his passion in sports now. I mean, he's so into it. He's a Chelsea fan. He owns a football team and so on and so forth. But even then, he couldn't play to save anybody's life, right? But he was genuinely so, and he wanted to play. And we would have net practice at this Air India ground at Kalina, and he would be the first to turn up. We would all come in at 7:30, bleary-eyed, ki kyo bula rahe ho practice mein. He would be there fresh, warming up and with his bandana. He was always number 11, honestly. I mean, he could just about make the team, but it was his passion which actually got us together, saying, hum log bhi khelte hain. Those days, there used to be this inter-media company tournament.
Right.
Star Plus, Z, Sony, there was Plus Channel, there was Nimbus, and then there was us. Right? So we actually made it just one step short of semi-final, so we would have actually qualified. Yeah,
but you think with his height he'd be like a nice bowler or something?
No, he was terrible, right? So he actually, I'm not joking, right? So he tried bowling and the ball wouldn't even fall into the mat, right? Punch to the short cover and short mid wicket had to be very careful when he was trying to bowl. And I know I don't want to digress too much, but I was telling this anecdote, right? Middle of the match.
He's been. Sorry, please go on.
So I think this was a match against CTV, and we were getting clobbered, right? And I used to bowl very, very slow medium pace. I modeled my bowling on, I don't know if you know this guy called Gavin Larson. Really slow, right? New Zealander, right? Right. Scott Styries was similar, right? The ball hardly reaches the stump, but it kind of does a lot in the air, right? So he suddenly walked up to me and said, Ganesh, I want a ball. He had just come back from wherever he studied, which I don't know. And I was like, can you please not even bring up this conversation right now? Luckily, he kind of cooled off, and then he went and fielded wherever he was fielding, and we actually won the match. How I don't remember how, but yeah. So those were the days, and it really exposed me to the process of filmmaking in great detail, film distribution, and because I was just out of campus and we were not too many people, I got to do everything. Right, the very first day of my job, honestly, at ABCL was as a production training. And we were shooting at Nariman Point with Saif Ali Khan and Karishma Kapoor for a film which eventually didn't release because whatever, if you got in trouble and the bank kind of forfeited the prints, whatever happened subsequently. Right. But my job was crowd control. So here I was fresh out of the school, and all I was doing was standing there and kind of push people back, saying, because it was 2 stars shooting in broad daylight in the middle of Nariman Point. Piche hoto. My job was along with.
What did your parents think of this?
They have no idea what I do. They haven't had a clue for what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years, right? All they know is that I got educated, I'm doing well, and they're happy for it, right?
Yeah, so that's enough for them, right?
Yeah. So 2 very, very adventurous years. There were times when we would not get salary for a couple of months because there was cash flow issues. But I mean, 22, 23.
Right.
The good thing was I was really very into that space, right? Even before joining that company, as a growing up boy in the suburbs of Bombay, I would really watch many movies. I would follow music. So even when I was maybe 10, 11, I would know songs by heart, all the stanzas, and I would sing in front of the classroom. I would know who the lyricist was. So I was actually kind of primed to do that job. Of course, I wasn't looking forward to joining because I also wanted a stable job. And as we all eventually found out, it was an extremely unstable job. Kind of shut down. Just before it was shutting down, I moved into a relatively safer domain of advertising. So I mean, even then, advertising also was not seen to be the best place to be in. Not from a stability point of view, but this whole service thing, right? So you're into client servicing, then
long hours and spending forever in office. But
the irony is that long hours then meant 7:30, 8 o'clock on days, right? Because once you left the office, and this was just before mobile phones came. Once you left the office, you were your own animal, right? I mean, you could do whatever you want. Nobody's reaching out. Nobody's asking, "Kya jaldi aao, tension hai, client by whatever." And those days, people would actually take printouts to the client office, show them, come back, make changes, and so on. So I was not in accounts. I was not in servicing. I was in account planning or strategic brand planning. More conventional marketing fundamentals. I worked on ITC Sunroof. I worked on a couple. My team launched Act 2 Popcorn in India. Nerolac Paints. Then I was on the Mahindra account for a while. So I used to go to outskirts of Bombay to some. Panvel was fairly unconnected then. I remember taking a train and a bus and some truck or something, and then trying to do some quality research there to figure out consumer behavior and so on, right? Fairly stable in that sense, but after the virus had kind of infected with the entertainment bug or whatever, I was kind of, I was not aching to go back, but I knew that someday probably I'd go back, if not in the film business, but probably periphery or whatever, right? And I was kind of looking forward to some break, and then Sony Music happened. Sony Music had just launched themselves in India in 98 with Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, a big seller, with Vande Mataram, a blockbuster, and also Venga Boys, which was at that point, or even to date, I think among the largest
hits.
Peculiarly, it's not as big in many parts of the world as it was in India. Right? So, seriously, Venga Boys' best sales were in India, and even they were surprised. What really did we do, right? So they were on a real high, and they were looking to expand, and I joined their team. Sony Music, fabulous stint, 4 years plus couple of months. Multiple roles. It's run like an FMCG company, right? So there are categories, and you are a category manager, and you kind of dive into other services and manage a target number of albums and so on. So I was part of the team that marketed soundtracks. I happened to work fairly closely on projects like Lagan, Ashoka, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, a couple of massive duds like Ghat and Dil Ne Fir Yaad Kiya. And so I could tell you the number of soundtracks, which is not relevant, but I also worked on the non-film part of life. So my first album, in fact, within a month of joining, I was in Shimla shooting with Pradeep Sarkar for a music video for a song called Piya Basanti, which went on to actually become a super popular song, Piya Basanti Re, and which was again followed within a month by another album called Sunset Point with Gulzar Saab, Chitra and Bhupinder. So I think we spoke about this once. It was way before its time, right? It's actually the earliest podcast that I know of, because it was a story that Gulzar Saab narrates, interspersed with songs. It was like an audio movie, right? The proper love story, and interspersed with songs that Chitra and Bhupinder sang. But I think we got the marketing positioning wrong, and it didn't work. But then I went on to do multiple things. But one of my better stints, or the most enjoyable stints, there was this role called A&R head.
Right.
A&R is artist and repertoire, and typically it's a non-business role. It's a right brain, engage with the artists, schmooze them, try to sit in the studios and get music out, etc. So one fine day, Sridhar, who still until 6 months back was heading India operations, and he was my boss even then. He just moved to New York, Sony Music, New York. He called me in and said, the A&R head is quitting and we want you to take over. And I was like, Sridhar, what's wrong with you? I'm a marketing guy, business school, and all that. He said, no, I think we all have decided that you will be good at this. So I took over. So 1.5 years into the company, I was part of the marketing team as well as the A&R head, right? So jamming with KK, sitting in the studio with Shankar Ehsaan Loy and making music, downing glasses of tepid lukewarm tea in Gulzar Saab's office. So we had actually signed up Gulzar Saab and Jagjit Singh for an album. This was a follow-up to another album called Marasim.
Right.
And my favorite...
The Marasim, legendary.
Yeah, so this was a follow-up to that, which kind of came out a year and a half after I quit, because it was it took time in making. I keep giving this example to people of how Gulzar Saab and Jagjit Singh were absolutely, chalk and cheese. Gulzar Saab had dignity, right? So he would be like, he would not negotiate. He would be too embarrassed to talk. So he would say X money is what we are offering. He said, "ठीक है, दे दो." On the other hand, Jagjit Singh, the late Jagjit Singh, his soul rest in peace, would sit down actually, take a paper, pen and say, "Bata abhi." They would talk in first person. बोल क्या बोल रहा है, बोल कितना होगा. So I'd be like, so we had the way it works is that you give an advance. It's called a recoupable advance. Let's assume it's 10 lakhs. So every cassette and every CD that sells, eventually, so on top of 10 lakhs, if you spend say 20 lakhs of marketing money, music video, etc., you recoup the 30 lakhs first.
Right.
And then every additional rupee you make, you give a fraction to the artist as royalty. Right.
Points. Right.
So we had variable royalty for cassettes and CDs, and typically it would be 3 rupees per cassette and 8 rupees per CD or whatever, right? So he would sit down and negotiate. इसका 2 रुपए क्यों दे रहा है? इसका 2.5 कर. नहीं 2 से नहीं होगा, 2.5 कर, 8 नहीं होगा, 10 कर. So he would actually get down to numbers that he would negotiate. And
like he would do it himself without like
himself.
a manager.
No, nothing. No. So this was a different era, right? I mean, he would probably have managers to book his dates for ghazal concerts or whatever. Sure. But all these they would do themselves. Even Gulzar Saab didn't have a manager. So he had a manager called Putti Saab. I don't know if he's still around. But Putti Saab is the person who would call to fix up a schedule or a meeting with Gulzar.
Like a bookings manager sort of.
He's sitting outside his office. Right. And it will be like, मुझे 4 बजे आना है, सर गुलजार साहब फ्री है क्या, 5 बजे आना है, whatever, just a secretary kind of thing, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and then great fun, right? Made music with Vasundhara Das. There was this guy called Nitin Raikor, right? He had just done done Atikya Khandala. He had written Atikya Khandala.
Right.
And he had written Khalas for company. And he was the flavor of the year, right? So we made some very interesting branded content music with him. I remember when again we talk about branded content, we made a song for Sony Vega. They were launching in India.
The laptops.
No, television, color television.
Oh, so the bio is the laptop. Vega is correct.
Yeah, Vegas, right? So they had, they wanted to communicate flat screen.
Right.
But they wanted to do it in a very cinematic manner because I think the Japs thought India mein movies chalta hai, to kuch karenge. So we had done this song called Patli Cover.
Right.
Nitin Raikor wrote and KK and Vasundhara sang and Isha Kopikar ke saath we did a music video, branded video.
Right.
So you would have like full screens of Vega and something happening. So anyway, so I'm saying that 22 years ago we did this whole brand integration. Not 22, 17, 18 years ago. But yeah, right. So we still do branded content, right? But great fun.
So this is like early 2000s.
This must be 2003 types. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
I quit in 2004. Yeah, it was a year ago. Year before that. So I made a lot of music with Sandeep Chota. And there was this
the Sandeep Chota.
Yeah. So we created an album called Mirchi. Again, before its time, beautifully re-engineered songs, folk songs, but Sandeep Chota, right? In fact, 2 anecdotes, quick ones. Chitrangada Singh,
right, of course.
She had never appeared on any audiovisual format. So the Sunset Point video I spoke about, Gulzar Saab and Upinder Chitra, so that was her first videos, and I was the product manager, and I had the honor of approving, saying, yeah, this heroine will do fine. So Chitrangada Singh and Katrina Kaif. So boom, she had shot for. But this Sandeep Chota album I told you about called Mirchi, so we had done a video with her and Shayan Munshi, shot in Rajasthan with massive desert kind of feeling and all that. So she was again, her first appearance on screen was on a product on which I was product manager. So
that's amazing.
So whatever it's worth. Right,
no, that's a great contribution to pop culture. Absolutely. Right. I mean, Chitrangada Singh, I'm a huge fan of. Obviously, Katrina Kaif is I think 20% of the industry right now or something.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So at that point in time, nobody knew her. But what happens is that people notice and then they immediately start saying, "Ye kaun hai?" So even the Piya Basanti girl called Nahin Sairisi. Yeah, but she didn't make it big. But as soon as the video went on air, Mukesh Bhatt called. She
was on TV for a while. She was a VJ. She was on TV.
She was. So she did that, but she didn't make it big in the movie. Mukesh Bhatt actually was very interested. I think he also did a movie. Ashwit Patel and.
She did a movie.
Couple of movies, and then she was. I think she was the. 4 years ago, I saw her on a series of Godrej commercials.
She did. I think that was the Air or something.
Multiple. So I think Godrej same couple, multiple brands, multiple Godrej brands. She was the wife, right? So very spunky, nice girl from Parsi colony, the other. But I think she didn't have too much interest also in this business. But again, so Sony Music had kind of given.
She'd become a bit of a youth icon for a while after Piya Basanti. I think for a few years she was. Yeah, she had
TV.
On TV as well, like a DJ stint as well.
I think stuff like that. Right.
Yeah, I know that. Wow, that's it's simultaneously a trip down your career and my childhood almost. Like,
I can imagine.
My early teenage years.
So when I speak to my team and I've kind of done guest lectures in colleges, I always do this saying, you must have been in school, you must have been in college. So I can kind of figure out the time frame, right? I mean, it's been a while in this business. Yeah, and then I joined the Times Group. They were trying to get into the movies business. We didn't really make it big because I think there was a clash of, or actually there's confusion in terms of what we really wanted to do. Did we want to be on the creative side? Did we want to be in the studio? There were multiple schools of thought. We did one film called Being Cyrus with Saif Ali Khan. which was Homi Adajania's first film. He later went on to Cocktail and Finding Fanny. And we didn't do too many. We did a couple of films in the South, and then I moved to the radio business internally. Right. Again, another move into the content side. Again, when I joined the Times movies business, I was on the business side. But Prashant Pandey, who continues to be the CEO of Radio Mirchi, he's been employee number 2, right? I think he joined in 2001 or something. Whenever before Radio Mirchi launched, right? So he sat me down and said, "I think you will be great in content. I know you're a business guy. We understand your background." He also is from IMD, I think 6-7 years. He said, "We completely know your background, but we wanted to take up a random assignment." And he said, "Go to Bangalore and take over the regional programming head role." Programming is content, right? We call it radio programming. Programming, not in the IT context, right? I was like, again, what is wrong with you? I'm a business guy. I'm managing a P&L. He said, no, we're confident you will do this. Just go. And then I went to Bangalore. I spent a good 4.5 years in that role. Good fun. But again, the whole mandate was to bring in a marketing sensibility into content management, right? Because typically what happens in radio, and you've met creative people, right? So the whole thought process is, ye acha lag raha hai, to ye karte hain, which sometimes is not too bad. I mean, sometimes you have to be in the black box, but most often, particularly in a business which is very consumer facing, and there is a predictable consumer behavior pattern, you are driven by marketing fundamentals. There's consumer research available, you know what kind of shows are working, what kind of content is working, what kind of music works in what part of day. So I brought in, the whole mandate was actually to bring in a marketing sensibility. And we had 9 radio stations in the South, so I used to manage the whole region. And very, very different from what I had done till then. Very big team also. And I'd never been in the audio alone business. So that happened. And then I moved into a music streaming business in 2015 called RDO. Very short stint, 6-8 months. It got acquired by another global company called Pandora. RDO had itself acquired an Indian company called Dhingana, and they were planning to scale in India, but within a year they got acquired, and Pandora said, "We don't have too many plans to expand in India right now, so you'll do what you do." I didn't want to run a maintenance job. So I moved back to Mirchi in this current role, right? Which is
head of original content and
licensing. Yeah, internally we call it original content, but as you said upfront, it's largely the video entertainment business of Mirchi. Right. I must again clarify that there are 2 kinds of videos we do. The RJs, we have more than 150 RJs in the system. They do videos for social media on a daily basis, right? Handheld, UGC, Father's Day, Mother's Day, ye kiya, wo kiya, whatever. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 1.5 minutes. But that's a totally separate. It's driven by a separate business. It's a separate business, right? But what we do under the original content business is actually create scripted content, web series, entertainment, web series, sketches. Pretty much in the same zone what you at TVF or what TVF does, what Pocket Aces does, Culture Machine, Scoop, in Marathi, Bhadipa. So so this whole consumer facing video entertainment is what we do. These are actually not early days. We've now been around for 2.5-3 years. But yes, in the scope of or in the scale of the other business, in the context of where TVF is or where Pocket Aces is, we are obviously not as big, but we have huge aspirations.
I would argue that across all networks, you probably reach as many people over time with the other digital partners as well. I mean, if I understand the business correctly, there's also, because you have 150 RJs, you also have regional content, and that's also growing very, very fast. I mean,
yes. So let me just quickly tell you how it works, right? So again, this business was fundamentally set up because of 2-3 reasons. One was, this was 2017-ish, right? And Jio had just happened. And data rates had crashed. The whole entire country was taking to data like nobody else. And in data, they were all migrating to video very quickly, right? Parallelly, smartphones, they continue to become cheaper and cheaper by the day. Advanced smartphones for much less price than they were even last year. And interestingly, and not too many people speak about this, if you look at life even 5 years back, and if you actually go to what kind of content you got on as something as basic as WhatsApp, most of the text was in English. Right. Somewhere along, a couple of software companies cracked an Indian Indus keyboard, which kind of broke the barrier. Right. So even if you were very educated but were not English literate, you could not engage with the internet. Right. Till around 2013, 2014, maybe internet was an English club largely. Right. You could not. It was not a function of how intelligent or educated you are, but it was a function of your English literacy.
Absolutely.
Right. Once that keyboard barrier got broken, coupled with this data rates and smartphones, the vernacular language content just burst out, right? I mean, even if you look at all the reports and all the data, pointing data today, 75% plus consumption on the internet is happening in local languages, non-English, right? Hindi, of course, is a huge chunk, but even Tamil, Telugu, Bangla, Marathi, Gujarati, they're all contributing major numbers. And we 3 years ago saw this position that we were in, right? So now again, imagine we are physically present in more than 65 cities in this country.
Right.
Not many companies can boast of this, right? I mean, people have depots and warehouses and chota branch offices or whatever. We actually have independent teams sitting in each of these, and they are all kind of, they're templates of either replicas of each other, right? Because every language market has a content head. I'm not even talking about the monetization business revenue part, right? There are like 10, 20 RJs in each language. There are copywriters, there are producers, right? So through these people, and each of these language markets, we've been around for at least 10 years, right? Mostly 15 plus years, but in some states we came in during the second or third auction phase or whatever, right? Phase 3 as they call it. But with these people, through these people rather, we are able to, we kind of know what happens in these markets. We understand entertainment preferences in these markets. We kind of clued into the cultural grammar of that market, right? Of course, the team largely sits in Bombay, at least the content team, but through these people we understand. The second thing that happens to us is that because these teams interact with the local film and creative industry on a day in day out basis, our access to these people is fairly smooth, right? In each of these languages, and beyond Bombay, film stars are not so difficult to access, right? Even writers, directors, production houses, and everybody is aspiring to create interesting, engaging content.
Absolutely.
Everybody is aspiring to be on platforms because, and unfortunately in this country, again, all the money is stuck in Bombay, right? Largely, maybe Delhi, maybe Chennai. But even if you have a great idea, there's nobody to fund you. There's nobody to produce what you have. So they're also looking always for people with stable cash flows, people who you start a project, it won't get stuck halfway through saying paise khatam ho gaye and all that, right?
Absolutely.
So as a combination of these factors, we realized that we could, while the whole world was busy in Bombay creating Hindi content, including TVF and Pocket Aces, we realized that the other uncharted markets were fairly free to take, right? I mean, you could just go there and say we want to produce content, and we were happy to do that. And we seem to have done pretty well in that zone, right? So we've actually published content in 6 languages already. By the end of this year, I think that number could go up to 10. We actually have web series playing in Telugu, in Punjabi, in Marathi, Gujarati, Tamil, and Hindi, right? And this is a combination again. So we do we do brand supported content on our YouTube channels, and we do a lot of content licensing with MX Player.
Right.
But
like again, solely MX Player or other
so far it's been very good with MX Player, but our discussions are on right now with Woot and Sony Live and Z5, etc. Right? Then Netflix and Amazon, I'm sure someday we will, but the other scale of or the kind of shows that they're looking for is very different, right? By definition, they only want content that has film names attached to it, directors, actors, etc. And I mean, to be fair, that's how they define content, which is fine. And someday, obviously, we would want to do that. But so again, the first 3 days we were in a very different. First 3 years we were in a very different space, right? We didn't intentionally want to scale crazily, right? We didn't want to do these 45-minute episodes and crime drama and thrillers and Mirzapur or whatever, right? Patal Lok kind of shows. Ours was a very slice of life, happy, fun, romantic comedy. Fewer characters, but
what you would expect on radio in general, like kind of ported over for a digital sensibility.
Not really, no. So radio, unfortunately, radio doesn't allow you space to do content. So in an hour, 35 minutes is music, and on a good day, 15 minutes is advertising, right?
Sure.
So all you have is 10 minutes to display how good you are from a content point of view, right? And even out of these 10 minutes, there are some other internal show promos, OAPs or whatever. So there's something happening there. So the RJ actually gets to speak for 4 to 6 minutes in an hour.
Right.
That's the math. We also discourage them from speaking for longer because apparently people don't like too much talk and they're in there for the music is what research shows all the time.
Right.
So unfortunately, and which is one of the reasons why all radio stations also sound alike. Right. So one of the biggest drawbacks or the research continuously throws this, right? Every station sounds alike because they all play the same music.
Right.
Again, there's a totally different genesis, why it started, etc. That's a separate discussion. But the content that we do on radio is very independent of how we played this business, right? So the only connection probably was, if at all we wanted to go back to the brand and this whole Mirchi sunne wale always push, we wanted to be in a very positive space, right? And to be honest, we are also a listed company. So we are not, we're always looking at shareholder value, and we are not the most risk-friendly company out there. We take very measured steps in whatever business we get into. So we didn't want to create something for 3 crores and then figure out, right? So we still first sell and then make. Right. So actually, fortunately, our very first web series flew, right? I don't even know if you know about this. There's a Tamil series we did called Kalyanam Condition Supply. So to date, it has done some 18 million views on YouTube, all organic. We have not pushed a single view. And I know that TVF and sometimes even Dice Media videos to 5-10 million each. This was a 6-episode piece, right? Six episodes together has done some 18.5 million views.
No, but I think that the thing you said about TV for Dice Media, I think that distorts the value of a million. It boggles the mind that things have 18-20 million views and we just say,
seriously, right? You're right.
Yeah, it boggles the mind.
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes it also surprises you, right? What content can work. So I remember, I think College Romance is in 25-30 million per episode.
100 million plus overall, 120 million.
And it was some of the most basic shows that you could ever think of, right? In fact, if we were curated and saying College Romance, they chhod de, aur karte. Possibly, right? But
I remember, Ganesh, early days of when this kind of growth was happening, our favorite pastime was to calculate how many theatre seats that would fill.
Okay, so divided by the number of...
Yeah, we would do that kind of calculations to start up and all. You have dreams and stuff, but I mean, coming back to Moot,
of course,
it really distorts the value of that million, right? We released this song yesterday with Jasleen Royal, and which is an indie artist, कुछ 1.5 lakh subscriber है उसके YouTube पे, and it reached 1 million, and I felt that you feel that perspective. So, I mean, to whatever College Romance or TV does, I think any piece of content that has 1 million, 2 million views per episode, it's a massive thing because the audience is under no obligation to come back for episode 2, or 3 or 4 or 5, right?
No, totally.
So it is the content that scales. But back to you, sir.
Actually, 3 years ago, I think 1 million YouTube views was equivalent to the 100 crore club in Bollywood, right? So it was like that kick that you get saying 100 crore ho gaya, right? So now obviously it's moved to the 200 crore club, and I think videos have moved to the 2-3 million view club. But anyway, so Kalyanam Condition Supply continues to be the largest Tamil web series ever made. No other web series has touched those kind of numbers, and every view is organic, right? A very simple premise. I mean, actually, also you could call it something that was all done before, but it was done in a very unique manner, right? So we also have this RJ in Tamil Nadu called Senthil. Been with us for 15 years, but is more popular as a TV star. So he's acted in a lot of TV shows, and his real life wife Shrija is also a TV star as a couple. So they used to come. So this is like, I mean, somebody gave me an example of they were in I think in the Hindi television industry there were 2-3 Hiten Tejwani and Gauri Pradhan or something. Right. So real life couple, also on screen couple, right?
Right.
So but they used to appear in this GEC Saas Bahu kind of show. So we took them out and made them like a thoda contemporary working couple in Chennai. Whatever Chennai allows you to showcase as contemporary. Like she was in salwar kameez throughout, and while in the show she would be in sarees and all, right? And the 6 episodes, slice of life, what happens in the life of a working couple. Not even long episodes, 12, 13, 14 minutes each. And it just, and we don't know what to expect, right? Again, I mean, you should know this, right? So again, I said content role in Sony Music, content role in radio. And here, and because this business was new, I was working alone. So the mandate was work with the radio teams and try and create a business. We'll figure out a team when the time is right. So I was actually parked in Chennai for this show. I was co-writing it. I was I didn't get into obviously directing. I'm not a director by this thing, but we were all brainstorming, looking at insights and putting together, changing dialogues. We did a title song. We did some changes together. I actually sat on the edit table for the longest time. I wrote all the subtitles myself. So it was actually like a startup. It was the first show, and to be fair, Mirchi is very empowering in that way, right? So they said, "Chakar." They didn't even ask me where I was, right? So I was actually parked in Chennai for a really long time. Eating, I'm a Tamilian, so the city does agree with me. I mean, if you were not from there, I think after 4 days the food would get to you, right? But yeah, so I then actually got somebody to write the subtitles. I don't know if you know this, but Indians don't get subtitles right for some reason, right?
Right.
I mean, either there are spelling errors, or they do white on white, or they don't just capture the essence of what you're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote
it's too literal or too out there.
Yeah, they don't convey what is to be conveyed, right? So I then sat down and I wrote all the subtitles myself for all 6 episodes. So it was like a khud ka baby. Like everything was coming together, and we just put it out, and suddenly, like I remember releasing it, taking the flight, and it had done some 5,000 views. And I landed in Bombay, it had done some 35,000 views in those 2 hours.
Right.
I was like, "Okay, yaar, not bad." And in 5 days, it crossed 1 million views. I was like, "Shit, this is gold," right? And then every episode crossed 1 million faster. And then obviously, I mean, we didn't push it too much. We pushed it on radio and digital, but we didn't put money on it to, to inorganic, or we didn't go beyond our ecosystem. And then it did 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. Karte abhi it's at some 18 odd million. It still gets viewed, right? So we did that. Then we did a show with, we did a non-fiction piece right after that with, again, an RJ called Vineet in Ahmedabad.
Right.
Very popular in Gujarati, in that market, in whole of Gujarat. He does a show in Ahmedabad, but it's very popular in all of Gujarat. The show called Jalsa Party with Vineet. So again, what we realized is that it's a simple chat show, right? But in Gujarati, nobody had done a normal sit-down, cozy chat with anybody. So this was 2 guests every episode. One was Sachin Jigar, one was Falguni Pathak and Parthiv Goyal, one was Nayan Monge and Parthiv. Different walks of life.
Well, a little bit like this show.
Which one, sorry?
A little bit like this show. I also started this show as a 2-guest format, but...
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2 guests from a similar field. And it was so organic, Vineet, that we didn't even have a set. And it was not planned to be shot within 3 days, 4 days. Isko 4 baje bolo, 6 baje bolo. We just shot where we could, right? So, ek kisi ghar pe, ek kisi restaurant ke outdoor cafe mein hai. 2 episodes Bombay mein, Juhu mein, we hired one chota room and we shot there because Sachin Jigar didn't want to travel to Ahmedabad, and I think Falguni and Parthiv Goyal also based in Bombay and so on. So if you look at the show, all the 6 episodes look different from a background point of view, but the host is the same and the content is super engaging, right? They're sitting down, Sachin Jigar are jamming on the guitar and singing Gujarati songs. Beautiful, right? So it did very well. Then we did a chota spoof piece with Sehwag. We were trying different pieces. We didn't really know.
I remember talking about this spoof piece with Sehwag.
Yeah, I think I'd come to your office. I think I'd come to ask Aruna if they would want to launch it because I thought it was comedy and maybe if you are wanting to, kind of widen your appeal. Because it was written with a very TV sensibility. At that point, if you remember, Sehwag's social media handle was flying and he was adding some million followers every month or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But again, we realized that 80% of his followers were from the Hindi-speaking market. Because all the text and comments would be in Hindi. So we actually went to a TV writer, the same writer who wrote for Kapil Sharma, who writes for Kapil Sharma, was the writer who wrote this spoofy piece where Sanket Bhosle and Suresh Menon and Ketan Singh, they became Anu Malik and Arnab Goswami and Sidhu and all that. It did fairly well. We put it on YouTube later. So somewhere along, MX was kind of going to launch, right? This was just like 4 months before MX actually launched, end of 2018. We got into a discussion with them, and honestly, many people say, "Hey, वो तो group company है, उनको आराम से मिल जाएगा." But it's not like that, right? MX now, of course, is not even a group company because a lot of investor money has come into MX. If you're tracking data, right now they're fairly heavily funded, and PIL's stake is on the down now. But even then, even when they were actually technically a TIL company, they were evaluating all projects on merit. Right? They saw what kind of work we had done, and they said, "Okay, let's start with 3 shows." So we produced 3 shows, and it's a licensing deal. So we don't give out IP, right? That's one basis that the one fundamental tenet for the business when we started was that we'll try and retain IP because it seems to be a business in the longer term, right? We may not make money offhand. So we said we will license to you for whatever 1 year, X territory and all that. And we created 3 shows. So the Kalyanam Condition Supply show that I spoke to you about, which we put on YouTube. The season 2 we did for MX. We did a Marathi show called Ani Kai Hava with popular film stars Umesh Kamath and Priya Bapat. And we did a Gujarati show called Do Not Disturb. Again, Malhar Thakur was the male lead, who he's the #1 Gujarati film hero for the last 3-4 years. Superstar, right? We managed to somehow convince him to do a web series and all that. And these 3 shows, again, when they put out on MX, they really did well.
Right.
MX was just trying to get into the regional space. They put out this launched with a lot of Hindi content, right? They did all these... I don't even remember the names of the show. Afat and...
a lot of them. Yeah, my God.
I think even TVF gave them that...
we had a deal at that time.
Not inmates. So
Immature.
Yeah, immature, right? Yeah.
The show that we'd sent to Khan at that time.
Yes, I've seen that case study.
Yeah,
right? So on the back of those Hindi shows, they put out these regional shows. They did very well. So even today, all 3 shows I think are in the top 20 regional shows ever, right? So and then on the back of that, we got into a much larger deal. So we are currently in the middle of a 10-show deal with MX. We've already delivered 7 shows. In fact, 5 of them have released through the lockdown. Yes, through the lockdown we put out. So Ani Kai Hava, the Marathi series show that we had done, season 2 we put out in April. super hit for them. I mean, obviously the lockdown also helped, but that's an IP which really does well. We're discussing season 3 with the creators, Pune-based creators. Do Not Disturb, the Gujarati show, season 2, we shot just after the unlock happened. We finished shooting 2 weeks ago in Ahmedabad.
Already?
Yeah. Oh, the shooting environment has totally opened up across.
No. I mean, I'm aware of that. But that must be a super efficient shoot.
No, so we were supposed to shoot from 27th of March. Everything was set, scripted, ready to roll, and then they said, "Abhi to thoda din push karte, फिर we shot in August, right?" So we've shot that. We delivered a Punjabi show. Marathi show also got stuck halfway through with a 3-day shoot remaining because of the lockdown. Again, I don't know if you follow Marathi television. There's this very well-known female called Shreya Bugde.
Yeah, of course, I know Shreya Bugde.
Yeah, the number one show in Marathi is called Chala Hawa Yehu Dya. It's a Kapil Sharma kind of a non-fiction show. She's the female comedian, female humor person, right? So I
found out about her because we used her on a campaign we did this summer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I found out this summer. Not that I follow Marathi TV.
Of course. Great person to work with. So she appears in her first fiction show. We just finished shooting. In fact, just before this call, I was figuring out when we are getting the final episodes, etc. So 3 days of shoot was stuck, but we managed to shoot in August, and now that's our that will be our 7th show into that 10-show deal for MX. And Do Not Disturb season 2 will be the 8th show. So we finished Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi, and Punjabi. So 6 languages we've delivered in this lot. And again, we will continue to hopefully, when we're discussing the next slate of shows that we want to do with them. But the intent is not to just be a one company licensing partner. In discussion with the Z5 and a Voot and a Sony Live, right? Even Hangama we are talking to and figuring out how to do it. So we again have two parts to this business, right? This, what I was talking about in length was the licensing part for the MX piece. But the first 3-4 shows that we spoke about, we worked with brands, right? So on the Tamil show, we had Nippon Paints as the principal partner. On the Gujarati show, we had 3 brands. In fact, he's so popular there that there was a real estate company that wanted to showcase some upcoming piece. So we did the whole shoot, part of the shoot. So we also had a musical segment in the end. So we shot that piece there. The interviews were shot in multiple places, but we shot significant portions in the real estate piece. There was a cooking oil brand that was interested. So we had like a 2-minute ghee cooking with celebrity guest kind of. Right. So we had to throw that in. And then the Sehwag show, HSM. So we had a Vimal Ilaichi as a partner. Right. So that business has really taken traction. So again, till last year, this time we had no team. I was one, and the selling was done by the radio team.
Right.
But you and I think, know that the selling is very different. Like
absolutely.
Koshi had done a Chota program in our office, and he said that this is test match. So if you're playing T20, please don't even get into this business, because in long run hai, you meet a client some 6 times to even get his attention to figure out what business kya hai, and only over time will you kind of take traction. Right. So I think you came and did that session with us, right? That's around the time when the team took off. Nikit Shah joined us as head of revenue.
Right.
You know Nikit Shah from before, or you only know her from the session?
I know her for the session,
Yeah, so she heads revenue. Now we have a team under her. We have a team in Bombay, in Delhi, in Bangalore. We have one specific person in Chennai because, again, multiple reasons. Tamil is a very strong market for us.
It's a very different market,
Yeah, it's entirely different, right? It operates, the brand, the top 10 advertisers would probably not even feature on the national landscape, right?
Absolutely.
You have Vasant and Co. and Gold Winner Oil and all that. So it's like it's a retail market in that sense.
Right.
We are very strong there from a language content perspective as well as from a, say, position perspective.
Right.
So he's responsible for the entire state. In fact, a lot of money is actually spent by advertisers not in Chennai, right? Textile, generators and diesel and so these pumps. So there are a lot of people who spend money on them. They are all in Coimbatore and Tirunelveli, Salem, Madurai and all that, right? So this person that we have looks after the whole state. So that's a revenue team which takes care of ad supported content. In fact, I think I was trying to meet you at some point also. We should discuss what is possible.
Oh yeah. We should definitely do that. I know she'd messaged. I think she'd messaged a couple of days ago only, and I'll come back to that in
is it? No, I didn't know that. Okay, fine. Whatever.
A couple of days ago she messaged.
Yeah, so she works with me on the brand supported content piece, and there's a licensing team that takes care of these discussions with
right.
So that's pretty much it. The thinking, as I said, behind it was that video clearly seems to be the future. We can't let go of our radio legacy. Radio will continue to grow, whatever projecting numbers, right? And thanks to COVID, again, I think we're now probably where we were 3 years ago. Right. It's going to take a lot of effort to kind of bring about this resurgence. But internally, we've had this transformation story going on for the last 2 years, and very clearly, very aligned top management team that's trying to move the entire company into a totally different zone, right? Our dependence on core radio, we want to bring it down to as low as 60% over the next 2 years, right? Difficult. I mean, obviously, thanks to COVID, it looks very easy because the radio value has dropped, so anything else becomes makhan.
Right.
But even from a people perspective, we are largely engineered towards being a radio network. Out of the 1,200 people, I think more than 70% are employed in core radio. So we're doing a lot of fundamental change, even from a designation point of view. We're going to, all the radio programming as a term we're letting go and we're calling it content, because now all the people are expected to be content professionals, right? So every RJ is now mandated to do X amount of content on social as well as whatever. Apart from his core radio role, he or she is also mandated to now do a lot of work for social, video, digital, whatever else, right?
Great. Ganesh, before I ask you more questions about the how of going video with Radio Mirchi, I just want to say that I think from what we've heard over the past, in the past hour or so from you, it's an insane effort that has gone into turning a radio company, future-proofing for a radio company, and doing it right? And from a lot of the things that you said, and while I'm definitely going to have you back to talk about the economics of music on an absolutely separate episode for sure, right from cassettes to streaming, I want to focus a little bit more after this break on how you did it, right? It's something that I've personally been part of trying to do at TVF. I know every single OTT network is trying to do it, right? But nobody apart from, I would say, legacy TV players have been able to sort of crack that code, right? But they've also had their own challenges. So right back after these messages with Ganesh Iyer to talk about the how of going video with Radio Mirchi. Stay tuned.
I want to thank Intel for supporting our show. Do you remember when last year we spoke about how the Intel vPro platform is built for business? Well, I'm glad to say we've kicked things up a notch. That's right, Intel is back with a new and improved version of the platform. Optimized with 10th generation Intel Core processors, the platform is just what IT and business users need, especially in times like now when most of us are working from home. The new Intel vPro platform lets you do more of what you want and less of what you don't. So it's better for you and for your IT teams, who really are the backbone of keeping your work from home experience easy and enjoyable. The platform is built to minimize your efforts and maximize your PC productivity, especially when working from home. I can safely say that the new vPro platform gives you more enterprise efficiency with less constraints. Visit intel.in/morewithvpro, that's VPRO, to discover how you can get more done with less waiting. If you're listening on the IVM Podcast Android app, take a look at the screen right now and you'll see a link which will take you directly there.
Back on Storytellers and Storysellers with me, Vineet Kanabar. I have Ganesh Iyer here from Radio Mirchi. We're talking about how Mirchi has gone video with so much success. Before we went into the break, Ganesh told us about the sheer range of shows and languages that Mirchi is producing in, and about how they've got some really top talent from across markets and across languages working with them. Ganesh, tell me about the how, about how this happened, right? How this transition happened. Clearly, there was a business need, right? And I'm going to try and draw parallels with how most media players went OTT, right? People saw Netflix happening around the world. They saw YouTube taking over around the world, but a lot of them didn't have a clear strategy or a clear need gap, right? Legacy media players started going OTT as if it was a copycat thing. Everybody said, "Abhi mujhe OTT banana hai." 35, 40 OTTs, as you say, right? Very few of them looked at content creation strategically as a sort of way of future-proofing your business, as a way of securing the next maybe 20 years of media, right? And it felt like the shiny new technology thing for a lot of these companies, right? Again, I'm not taking away from any of their efforts here, but it felt like that to me as an observer. Hearing Mirchi's story from you and how you guys have done it, it seems a lot more, how do you say, content forward or story forward? Right. It feels a lot more viewer forward as opposed to company forward, right? And that's what really struck me as interesting, because what you're doing is solving a consumer need gap that is aligned to company strategy, as opposed to superimposing company strategy onto whatever my consumer. Treating them as a TV consumer, which is the point. Talk us through how these decisions were made. What I'm trying to get at is, how did your creative philosophy and your sort of associated decisions, do they start to emerge from the kind of work that you did, or did you take from how it was for radio and sort of think about it. How did that come about? I would say it must have been a time of like lots of difficult, interesting decisions to be made at the time. I'd love to know how that was.
So it was is a wrong word. I think it continues to be, right. It still is, right, because it's this. I think we're probably living through the most challenging times when it comes to media, tech, and consumer or media consumption at large, right?
Absolutely.
Largely. So the first thing, we were very clear with what we did not want to be or what we did not want to do, right? We didn't want to be in the tech space. We are not a tech company, right?
Right.
So radio honestly is fairly at the low end of technology. It doesn't require too much to put to a radio station. As long as you have a tower that supports you, all you need is fairly well soundproof studios and some basic RCS kind of software that can
essentially the same technology as it was in the 18th century, just nicer, faster.
But more updated software, right? I mean, you can
simplistic about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is as simplistic as you're making out. It's just that versions keep changing to 6.0 to 7.0 to 842.0 or whatever, right? So, so you can now program from anywhere and it can play anywhere and so on. But largely, we are not a tech company at heart. And I must also say what we are, right? And you will see this in the DNA of the company, a very, very marketing company. It also emanates from leadership. Shant, as I was saying, is an IMD grad many years ago, but it's marketing. He's a marketing guy, right? At his very core.
So basically, the team is driven by very keen sense of marketing. We always put the consumer first, right? And that's pretty much how we build the business. Over the last 17, 18 years, it's not without reason that we've been number one. It comes more from a sensibility of understanding the consumer. Obviously, we've also built ourselves aggressively with a revenue orientation. Which I think is also intrinsic to the Times Group, right? So while we are a listed company, the majority stakeholders are still the owners of the BCCL Times of India system. And therefore, we are in a space where we understand that we need to do revenue, but we need to put the consumer first. So the first thing we said was we can't be trying to build an app also like everybody else, and we can't be trying to get out of tech space. We're good at curation, we're good at content, we're good at understanding consumers across the country, right? We're a very city-centric. So we saw ourselves as a very city-centric solution provider. We just said that we're going to be language-centric, right? So our ability, as I said, to understand language markets, we saw that as a huge strength, and we said we'll build on this, right? When it comes to video. There were also a couple of challenges, right? You should know that a company which has been built on a particular sensibility of, particular tech, 17, 18 years, suddenly overnight the shift can't happen.
Right.
I did, of course, mention that we're also a listed company and therefore there are only so many risks you can take. We always have to protect shareholder value and all that. But at the same time, we also are used to thinking in a particular way. One of the advantages of having people who've been around for a long time is that obviously you think alike, but that can also at some point be a disadvantage because everybody's thinking radio. Right. Personally, the advantage, or at least what I brought in, I had taken a few years out. So I was not in radio between 2013 and 2016. I had spent a couple of years outside, including that streaming company stint I said, right? So when I came in to kind of kickstart this business, I came in with fresh perspective. So we knew that we had to put the consumer at the center, and we knew, and while it was a challenge to kind of get rid of that radio legacy, we knew that this was the future, and therefore we had to kind of orient ourselves around this. We did 2-3 things, right? One more challenge. I must also mention one more challenge is that from a monetization perspective, when you go into the market and say that we want to do branded video content, it is extremely difficult to get that conversation going because most people still see you as Radio Mirchi, right? And I don't know. I can let you on this secret. I mean, it's not really a secret, but it's coming out. I think it's formally launching next week. We are letting go of the radio name in our branding. Right? So we are now called Mirchi. Right, you will see some PR around it. You will see a new logo. You will see a logo which is similar to the old.
Everybody who's listening in, you heard it here first. This is breaking corporate rebranding news.
Right. So what we realize is that the one thing that is holding us back from moving on to a totally different level of conversation, even with all stakeholders, consumers, customers, brands and media planners, was that everybody saw us as Radio Mirchi, everybody saw us as radio professionals. So even when my team would go and say, Radio Mirchi se hai, batao kya karna hai, then they say, video nahi hold. I thought you were going to tell me something about radio, and by tumhare saath, not only were the conversations difficult to get in the first place, but even why would I work with you? But credibility was becoming an issue because TVF ke saath kar lunga, Pocket ke saath kar lunga, main tumhare saath kyun karu? Right, so we've obviously been through that whole hardball.
It's where your legacy sometimes works against you there. But I want to stop for a second there, Ganesh, and talk about this, because it's an important brand in my life also. Radio Mirchi. I remember being 10 years old, and my cousins used to live in Pune, and I think that was the only first or second place where Mirchi was available at that time. I'm talking about 97, 98, and just this branding, right? The whole Radio Mirchi. At that time, it was It's Hot, and now bringing it forward into the video era and dropping the radio. I think it's definitely one of the most important radio brands that we have in the country, and to sort of see that move forward and the radio get dropped, it's both like it's a nice brand love moment for people who feel strongly about the brand. So congratulations on that. I think it's a very brave and important step that you guys have taken.
It is important because shedding that, like, we had to do this, right? So we've been again going into these deep dive discussions for the last year and a half. We've had these consulting firms tell us what to do. We've had this logo design firms tell us how to move away from the Radio Mirchi logo and so on. But eventually now we'll be called Mirchi, and the radio business will be called Mirchi Radio. I mean, it's just a twist of word. It's got a deep sensibility, right? So this whole corporate branding has been a huge step, because we are not only, so video is one big part of the story. The other part is digital, and which while it sounds similar, it's a totally different landscape, right? We have, I don't know how many people know, we have 22 online radio stations running. It runs on Ghana. We engage with some 60 million people every month across YouTube, social. So we have some 150 RJs in their social media accounts. We have 12 million plus followers on Facebook, some 2.5 million each on Twitter, Instagram. We have these 22 radio stations. We have a website. And so across these, we have some 60 million people who engage with us digitally beyond this original content video I'm talking about, right? So the transformation obviously is built on these 2-3 platforms that we want to be strong in. And as we go, hopefully the whole radio legacy, or we'll shake off the radio part of it, and we want to become an entertainment company. Right? We may not be in the movies business or something scaled up as dramatic as that, but we want to be engaging with the consumer on multiple platforms and keep entertaining and engaging them. So that's pretty much how the process is.
So I really, really admire the conviction with which you've gone about it, and obviously the rootedness in the consumer that is in it as well, and the step of the rebranding is something very, very interesting. I know you have to rush, Ganesh, and I definitely am going to block time with you right away to have you back on the show to talk about the economics of music from the late 90s to now. My last question before I just throw the recommendation bit to you is, if you were to give 3 sort of condensed learnings about working with creative talent, right? Whether it's Rahman, and I know you've done stuff with him, or it's Gulzar Saab, or it's a local RJ somewhere in one of your 60 odd stations. What are some 2? I know 3 might be too much to ask for, but some things that my listeners can take away from your experience working with creative people doing creative things.
One thing I always advise people is when they work with creative people is the feedback process, right? And this also comes back from my advertising days, is that if you don't like it, and I've seen this across, right? Maza nahi aaya, kuch aur kar. Is the worst feedback you can ever give, right?
Absolutely.
And as long as you're not explaining to that person why it is not working, and also some direction on how it could be made better, right? I think that is something that most people miss out on. It seems fairly simplistic. Right. But from a feedback point of view, when you work with creative people, you have to tell them what about this is not working and why it would, or how it could be made better. Second, I think it also is a bit of it is a sensibility, right? I mean, not everybody can do it, honestly. I mean, I'm not saying that you're required to be a genius to do this, but there is you just engage with them very differently. Again, the cliches of mujhe idea nahi aa raha hai, main shutta maar ke aata hu, but I'm not even talking about that, right? There's a way in which you engage with them. There's a bit of a right brain that comes in. It's not always about numbers and data. And even if you're a marketing guy trying to work with a creative person, you keep the numbers to yourself. You filter it out and just bring out the relevant point of that and why that part is important, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Otherwise, so each one is own and whichever way they can do.
Great. Thanks so much, Ganesh, for taking time out. I know we tried doing this a few days ago, but Bombay rains didn't allow us.
I know. Yes.
The network was all over the place. My last question, it's something that I ask everyone who's on the show, and I would love to get yours, is an entertainment recommendation from you to my listeners. Could be a book, a movie, a piece of music, an album, a game?
Yes. So since you asked me, I suddenly remembered something. So I mean, in one of my Lagan meetings, I had gone to Amir Khan's house, and he had given me, and he had a huge bookshelf, right? I mean, so I had picked up this book. Damn, I don't even remember the name of the author. It was The Art of Writing Screenplays, and I was fascinated by screenplays then. And if I do get the name, I'll maybe text you and you can slap it on. Fabulous book. It's by the writer of the screenplay of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you're filmmaking and you want to understand writing, that one. But off late, an entertainment show that I'm binging on and I'm surprisingly not finding too many people talking about is this show called Call My Agent. It's on Netflix.
Right.
It's a French show. And I also like it because I can kind of relate to it. It's set in a talent management agency in Paris. It looks at the French film industry through the lens of these three artist managers. Right? It's beautifully done, very well performed, lovely texture. It's a great show. So those two would be my recommendations.
So The Art of Writing Screenplays and Call My Agent, two recommendations from Ganesh Iyer, who's clearly a lifelong student and now a master of the world of entertainment. I will definitely have you back, Ganesh, to talk about music and our mutual grouse against the streaming world. But till then, thank you so much for making time and being on this episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. I hope you had fun.
Thank you. It was great fun, a lovely discussion, and it took me back down memory lane on multiple occasions, and I look forward to doing the other chat wherever we can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
All right. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel. It's been a great week on the network this week. If you haven't been paying attention, please do listen to some of the shows. We had Chetan Bhagat. This was the first returning guest on Cyrus Says. Do check that out. Great episode. We had Palak Zatakia on Advertising is Dead. Really interesting conversation was had with Varun. We had another crossover on the habit codes. Zarina Poonawala showed up over there to have a discussion with Ashton about anxiety and pressure. Begin the Journey with Ashish Vidyarthi continues to kill it. Please definitely do check it out. An old friend, Vijay Koshi, was on Storytellers and Storysellers. Do check that out as well. And I'd like to mention one thing. If you're a Tamil speaker, you should definitely check out our podcast, Kadai Podcast Punyan Selvan. Kavita Jiva has done a fantastic job to finish up her first story. It is the last episode which just came out last Monday. Do check it out if you speak Tamil. It is an incredible achievement. Please do check that out. And with that, hope to see you again next week.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, a show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance. From stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.